The East German border is the largest Soviet force outside the Soviet Union.
To be the silhouette of the vehicle, it is much smaller than ours.
Many of you are the soldiers who will have to face it and learn the lessons today, because tomorrow could be too late.
T-series tanks are arguably one of the most popular and iconic tank groups. They are most produced by far and are specifically designed to be low profile, so in specific scenarios of attack, they are less likely to have any enemy returning fire. Today, we dive into the history of these tanks and how they operate. Popular series of T-series tanks are the T-64, T-72 and the T-80. First, the T-64, which was the first Soviet tank to have a carousel autoloader in the hull, was a revolutionary design and was the base for Soviet tanks moving forward. The tank was originally manufactured in the Kharkiv plant in the 1960s. The tank introduced advanced features, introducing composite armour, a compact engine and transmission, and introduced the infamous smoothbore 125mm gun, with at the time the new carousel autoloader. This had its advantages, as given the Soviet army was mostly a conscript army, using an autoloader, the tank crew got reduced from 4 to 3, and the tank was significantly lighter for its armour, as yet it was armoured as a heavy tank, it only weighed 38 tons. But unfortunately, that came at a cost. The T-64 was expensive to build and manufacture. Given it was a new generation of Soviet tanks, it was significantly more expensive than previous generations. But there were several proposals introduced to the Soviet army with new engines and better armament. Fortunately, the only thing that stopped the army from scrapping the tank was chief designer Alexander Alexandrovich Mozorov's influence in Moscow that helped the design keep in production even when there were concerns about the price. So they released the T-64B, with B indicating the improved version of the tank. This version had mostly engine upgrades, which replaced the unreliable 5TDF engine and was fitted with the improved D-81TM or the 2A46-2 125mm gun, and had a new fire control system, the 1A33 system, that had a 1G21 sight with laser telemetry and a 1V517 ballistic calculator with the 1B11 crosswind sensor. Many versions of this were produced, but it was ultimately the basis for the T-80 and T-72. After many events and the growing problems with the T-64, the T-72 in 1972 was produced and yet trialled in 1973, in which, by 1974, the Soviet army accepted the T-72 into service in the Soviet armed forces. The basic design of the T-72, the Tu-72A in 1979, had ceramic steel laminated turret armour. The tank was also extremely lightweight, about 40 tons. The T-72A shared a lot with the T-64, but was a lot less cheaper and more reliable. The second version of this tank, the T-72B, had a new modernised version of the 2A46, also known as the 2A46M. It had a new two-plate stabiliser, which was the 2E42-2, with the famous carousel autoloaders mentioned with most T-series tanks. The T-72B featured the 1A40-1 fire control system and had a 1K13-49 gunner sights, which allowed the tank to use the 9M119 sphere gun-launched ATGM. The tank also had thicker armour, which was a new type of armour at the time, which was called Explosive Reactive Armour, ERA, and it had a new engine, B-81-1, which featured 840 horsepower and was a significant improvement over the old 780 horsepower supercharged engine. There were various modernizations to the T-72, and the tank was widely exported around the world to over 40 countries. This tank, alongside the T-64, was the foundation of the T-80 tank we know today. The T-80 was based on the T-64, while also having a lot of features from the T-72. This tank was gas turbine powered, and it had entered service in 1976 as it was the first production tank in the Soviet Union to be powered by a gas turbine engine. Although the T-80 looks a lot like the T-72, The T-80 is entirely mechanically different. The tank had a different autoloader, was gas turbine powered, and had different fire control systems. But it had similar armaments to the T-72, like the 125mm smoothbore gun that was also capable of firing ATGMs. But the tank was more related to the T-64, as the suspension for the tank is the improved version of that of the T-64. The only difference being was the 6 forged steel aluminium rubber tiled road wheels inside the tracks, which are bigger and way different than the steel road wheels the T-64 had. The T-80 uses a 1000 horsepower GT engine, the GTD-1000T, instead of the famous 780 horsepower diesel engine. This engine was incorporated into the tank to achieve greater mobility. The first version of the T-80 was basically an evolved version of the T-64A. It had the same capability of the T-72 Ural, which was the first version of the T-72. This tank had no missile capability, a Confidence rangefinder, the TPT-2-49, which was the basic rangefinder found on the earlier T-64As and earlier T-72 Ural. The second version of the tank, introduced in 1978, had a new turret with improved composite armour, a new improved 1A33 fire control system, a laser rangefinder, the 1G42 laser rangefinder version, and improved autoloader and capability of firing 9M112-1 anti-tank guided missiles. A night sight was added, which was the TPN-3-49, and in 1980, a new engine was added which added an additional 100 horsepower to the original engine. T-Series tanks are one of the most iconic tanks out there, but how do they hold up in these modern times, with recent conflicts like we're seeing in the Russo-Ukrainian War, and even before that in the 2000s, in Georgia or Chechnya? For example, the Russo-Ukraine War, the tanks were misused, in quotes, as they are made for huge-scale conventional warfare, and the way the Russo-Ukraine War is being fought is far from being conventional, which resulted in huge losses. There was one specific design choice, from the T-64 all the way through to today's T-80s, that's become a major liability in Ukraine, and that is a story on its own. We'll be covering it in the next video, so subscribe if you don't want to miss it. Also, comment your ideas below on what you think on this topic. All of our sources will yet again be listed in the description below, and we will see you in the next one.